Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's TOC podcast. I'm Joe Weichert, chair of O'Reilly's Tools of Change conference. I'd like to remind you that you can see all of the upcoming TOC products and events on our homepage at o'reilly.com/TOC. Today's podcast features Scott Berkun. Scott wrote a couple of books for O'Reilly, but he self-published his latest title, which is called Mindfire, Big Ideas for Curious Minds. And since Scott is an author who's worked in both the traditional and self-publishing camps, I thought it would be fun to talk to him about his experiences. So, Scott, welcome to this TOC podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've been really looking forward to talking to you about all this stuff.
Terrific, terrific. So, Scott, as I mentioned, you're one of a growing number of authors who's written for both a traditional publisher and now you've self-published. So, why did you decide against a traditional publisher and go the self-publishing route for Mindfire?
Well, I look at writing very seriously. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I've written 3 books. They've been all successful with O'Reilly, and I've had a great relationship with everyone I've worked with there. But I want to learn, and the only way I'm going to learn the most about every little detail about what goes into making a book is to do it all by myself. So I had always thought about it, and I tried to come up with different projects that might fit to do an experiment with. And I had this idea of writing a collection of essays about a wider range of topics, and it seemed like it was a good project to try and see what would happen. I'm very big on experimentation. I feel like it's good to go into projects where you're not entirely sure what the outcome is going to be, and that's how you learn. So I looked at this as a learning opportunity, and there was no way I was going to learn every element and every aspect of decision making around making books if I was partnered with a publisher. So it was never a question of, not working with a major publisher. It was a question of how do I learn the most about making books? That means I got to self-publish and figure it all out for myself. So that was by far the primary motivation. Just let's see what I learn.
Okay, well, I want to hear a bit about what you learned in a minute. Before we get to that, you're an extremely popular blogger, and just so listeners know, they can find your blog at scottberkun.com. So what role did the blog play in this book, as well as your earlier books for that matter?
The blog has always played a role because that's a sounding board for me. I always know I have a place if there's something I'm thinking about and I'm not sure, it's not clear in my head how to write about it, or there's some research topic that I'm having trouble with. The blog has always been an asset for me, and there's always people who I have the good fortune of having a popular blog. There's always people who are willing to contribute, and sometimes there are contributions to tell me that I'm completely wrong or that I've completely missed something. But even that's entirely useful if I figure that out before stuff makes it into the book. For Mindfire, the role was I was even more aggressive about it because I was accountable for every decision, from the title to the cover to the content, and it was all about, there was no one to negotiate with. I didn't have an editor I was working with. I didn't have a publishing board to talk to. I had them involved in everything. So they helped me pick the title. They offered suggestions for it, and then we voted on it, and then we did several rounds on the title. And then the same thing was true for the cover. We did 3 or 4 rounds of cover designs that my designer worked on, and they contributed in that way. And then they also contributed in the actual contents of the book, since the book is a best of collection. I've been writing essays for a long time. I've probably written hundreds and hundreds of essays and blog posts, and they helped me pick which ones were the best, and not only which ones were the best, but which ones could be curated together to actually make a good read, which is the big challenge for a book like this. So they were key. They were involved in many steps of the process, and I actually got about a dozen of them to give me feedback on the book as it came together. And that was not done through the blog, but I found those people through the blog itself. So the blog was a key part of the whole process.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, also, just to be clear to our listeners here, I'm obviously a big fan of yours. I've read your earlier books, and although I have not gotten a chance, I have to admit, to get to this one yet. I'm looking forward to starting this weekend. I admit that.
Well, I did just send it to you, so it's
fair. That's
fair.
True. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good point. But I just want to recommend all of your books to everybody who's listening, including this new one. So let's talk now about the lessons learned in self-publishing Mindfire. Are there 2 or 3 you'd like to call to our listeners' attention?
Sure. The first, which is the thing, I guess the surprising thing, is that it's easy. The technology's gotten so good that the technological parts, the actual construction of a printed book, is simple. There's hoops you have to jump through. There's some forms you got to fill out. There's some annoyances you have to deal with, but the pure basic logistics of it, To make a simple business book, a book that's mostly text and has maybe a couple of images in it, it's simply designed, is pretty easy. And there's no license you need to get. There's no a formal process or like a background check that's going to get done. But there's this sense that people have that there's some very complicated, and there isn't. So that was the first thing. And in the process of making Mindfire, I kept waiting for that thing to surface. I thought that getting an ISBN number would be this complicated process. No, you go to a website, it takes an hour maybe, done. And most things turned out to be that way. And then when the book was finished, I was like, wow, like pretty much anyone who, it's not to say that the book will be good or that the book will be successful, but anyone can go and actually get a book made of content that they have created. So that was the first thing that was surprising. And I found that to be very liberating as a writer. Mm-hmm. That I do still think there are many advantages that publishers offer. But when it comes to, if I have a clear idea for a book that I want to make, that I no longer need anyone's permission or approval to go and do it. I am free to do that, and that's empowering. There's no excuses really for people who have ideas for things to go, oh, it's too hard to find a publisher. Oh, I'll never find an editor. Oh, I don't have the money to publish a book. That's all. None of that's true anymore.
Right. Okay. All right. So go ahead.
I was going to say the second lesson, which is the counterpoint. That all sounds great and wonderful. It's free. Hey, everyone can make a book. Great, it's awesome. But the downside that comes with it is if you're going to make a book, you're responsible for everything. Everything. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work that goes into making a book that people never think about. That the cover design, like to make a good cover, takes a lot of effort. You got to hire someone who's going to do a really good job, and there's iterations and reviews, and then there's the editing process, and there's the higher level editing process of figuring out how do you tie together a whole bunch of ideas and make a narrative structure that people can enjoy and have and make it through. And then there's a lower level editing of reviews and copy editing and proofreading and building an index. And there's all these pieces and components that are in most books that people just assume magically happens. And when you self-publish, you're now responsible for every one of those little pieces. And it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So that was another reason why I wanted to do this at all, was it gave me a better recognition of the things that O'Reilly had always done for me that I never had to think about before.
So it's liberating on the one hand, but you appreciate a lot of the things that happen in the background with a publisher on the other hand, right?
Sure, yeah. That they've like freedom and response. This is like a Spider-Man commercial or something. Like freedom and responsibility, or power and responsibility, come together. That the more independence and autonomy you get, then the more work you have to do and the more care you have to take, because you're now accountable for everything.
Yeah, no question.
They come together.
So let's talk for a minute about distribution. As I mentioned, you've got this really popular blog. I would argue that you have a brand name out there and a great following that you can leverage, obviously, to sell your book. Outside of that, how is distribution going? How do you feel about it? Or do you feel like the bulk of your sales are going to come direct anyhow through your platform?
I think that the book is an experiment in a couple of ways. So I think that what you said is probably true, that most of the sales from the book will come through my platform. And I thought that I have enough followers, enough people who know of me, that that's going to be the basis for the sales of the book. That's also why I thought this particular book, which is largely essays that cover a wide range of ideas, is basically, if you like this Berkun guy and you like how he thinks about the world, this is how he thinks about a wide range of things, about how you find passion, about critical thinking, about creativity, a wide range of stuff. So I'm banking on people's sense of, I don't like to use the word brand, but people's sense of they like the way I think about the world. Here's a book for you, because it's Scott thinking about the world. So I'm banking on my platform to be the primary way the book gets distributed. But I also know from the other books that books go places that I can't. And so if this book makes it into the hands of someone who's never heard of me before, and they like the book, that's their way to find out about everything else that I do. Mm-hmm. And the book itself can be a vehicle for getting distribution getting people interested in my work that I would not have been able to get access to otherwise. So I think distribution's been good. One thing that I should mention about your previous question about the biggest surprises is the thing that's probably the most expensive or the thing that's the most involved is PR. And as a self-published author, you are completely on your own for that. So regarding distribution, I did this little thing as an experiment. I gave the book away for free for 48 hours. So for 2 days before the actual book, the official book launch, anyone on my site could download the entire book in any of the digital formats. And about 11,000 people did that in 48 hours. And that whole wave of people, a lot of them had never heard of me before. I had success with all my followers on Twitter at getting word about that out to people, and that free giveaway helped the book reach more people who are not part of my platform than they would have otherwise. Those don't count as sales, but again, I look at this on a long-term basis. If one of those people picked up the book and they read it for free, but now they're like, you know what? When I hear that name again with a new book, I'll probably buy it.
Yeah.
That was totally worthwhile because I'm thinking long term. I'm okay if this book doesn't sell that well, provided that it helps the books that I write in the future sell well.
Yeah. So what kind of advice, I guess, would you have for an author who's thinking about self-publishing but doesn't have a platform? I mean, I think that's such a big benefit for you, but I see so many and I hear about so many authors that are like, oh, self-publishing, that's so easy now and I can go out and do it. And my concern is that their expectations are going to be out of line with reality. What's your opinion?
Yeah, most authors have expectations that are totally out of line with reality.
Hey, that's your words, not mine.
It's totally true. Authors imagine most of their exposure to other authors are the high-profile bestsellers of the world. They imagine that just by virtue of having a book, that you get asked to be on television and people line out the door to get you to sign they have this very strange, it's not very strange, just the most common thing people see are the extremely popular examples of what writers' work lives are like. I think the advice I would give is that everyone has a platform, and if you want to do anything independent, if you wanted to start a consulting company, if you wanted to start your own business, if you wanted to start a startup, that you have to start building a platform to do anything independently, which writing a book is. Even if you're working with a publisher, you have to start thinking about, well, who's your network? Your network is your platform. Who do you have a good reputation with? I mean, in the social network world, it's like, well, who are your followers? Who are you connected with on LinkedIn? Everyone has a platform. It's just about how you cultivate it. Have you watered it? Are you planting seeds there? Are you trying to build credibility towards whatever the thing is that your book is going to be about? And since it takes 6 months to a year to write a book, that's plenty of time for anyone to start building their platform and thinking about how they're going to have an audience waiting for them when the book is out there. And that's just work. And everything about writing books and trying to be an author or a speaker is work. And if you're afraid of work, then it's probably going to fail anyway. You're not going to write a good book if you're afraid of work. So the advice I would give is to think about it in that context. Fine, you're going to start writing a book, 6 months, 8 months. Do you have a blog yet? Are you writing on it once a week? Are you reaching out to your network to get them to say, hey, I got this new blog, check it out? Are you contacting other bloggers and trying to show them that your content has value and making connections that way? I'm sure there's a good book written somewhere, and maybe O'Reilly's published one about how to build a platform. I don't think it's that complicated. It's just about effort. Assuming that you're smart and you're good at whatever the thing is you're writing about, I think building a platform is a natural thing that will happen provided you invest in it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're right too. There's probably a number of books out there. There's so many free resources too. I can think of people like Mike Hyatt, the chairman of Thomas Nelson, who writes about building a platform all the time. And I think, and I'll bet you'll agree with this too, that platform construction is as important for an author that's traditionally publishing as it is even for one that's self-publishing.
Absolutely. And I think that's also one of the things that people who work with a publisher expect, that that's all going to magically happen from the publisher. No, the author's always the best person to do promotion and PR, and a publisher can help them. But an author is going to be the author has to show up at the reading. The author has to go to their network and be there themselves, and that's something a publisher can assist with. But it's always going to be on the author.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that shift a lot over the last 5 years in particular. Speaking of which, and I'm sure you've seen this too, a number of traditional publishers have been experimenting and starting up little self-publishing shops within their domain. Thomas Nelson, again, is another good example there. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's something that traditional publishers should do?
I don't know. I've heard of these arrangements. I don't know the specifics of the details. I mean, one of the major trade-offs from I know other authors who self-published, or other authors who've done both. with. And one major trade is about just royalties, about the term sheets that you get as an author. And for some authors, the motivation for self-publishing is about the royalties. They feel they want to try to get a larger cut of the payoff for the sale of each book. So I don't know how that kind of arrangement would work. If you're self-publishing, but there's still a publisher, that has to have some effect on the term sheet because the publisher's only doing that. I mean, everyone's motivations are really usually kind of transparent. There's a profit incentive for any of these projects for anyone. So I don't know exactly how those sorts of arrangements work.
Yeah, just to be clear, the way a lot of them have been set up, I think so far, is that it's a separate brand. So like within Thomas Nelson, I think they started a new one called Westbow Press. So it's a completely separate identity from anything they would do in their traditional house. And the big differences are, like you said, higher royalties, but then also, true to self-publishing, it's kind of hands-off, okay? I'm sure there's some small amount of curation just because they don't want to have a bunch of garbage get in there, but I guarantee you they're not touching the manuscript anywhere near to the level they would for a traditional book.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of these arrangements. I don't know any author that's done them, so that's sort of why I can't really. I don't really have an opinion. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion.
Yeah.
That sounds like a middle ground where authors get more control, which is definitely something I enjoyed on this project. Is that I could make all my own mistakes. You know, like I like to say, I'm happy to make mistakes in life provided they're mine, and I don't feel like that a decision was made that I didn't like and the book failed or struggled because of that. And self-publishing means that it's all mine. If you find something wrong with the book that you hate, my fault.
Yeah.
It's all my fault, right?
Yeah.
If you find something that you love or you enjoy or moved you or changed you, well, that's also, I can feel like, yeah, that's because I made those choices. So anyway, this middle ground thing, giving authors who want more control, and supporting them in the ways that some of the more technical ways that publishers do. I mean, I suppose that's interesting.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I've yet to talk to an author who's done that.
Yeah, I think it's still on the very front edge of things, and I don't think too many publishers have done it. But I personally think it's going to grow in popularity. You're going to see a lot more publishers stepping out and doing that, if for no other reason than to experiment and see where it leads, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think traditional publishers have to do to avoid losing authors like you to the self-publishing world?
I guess I don't look at it in this polarized way. I think a lot of people do. So that for a lot of people, when they heard that I did this, they were like, "Oh my God! Like, what happened? Did you have a fight with O'Reilly? Did Mary Tressler say something you didn't like, or like what happened?" They assume there's some drama, and they assume that because I did this, that I will never work with O'Reilly or I'll never work with a publisher again. And I don't look at it that way. From what I've learned, I feel like now I understand everything that's involved. I know that I have a better sense of what all my options are, and for every book project I take on, I'll probably consider, well, for this project, maybe it makes more sense to go with a publisher, or maybe it makes sense because there are these certain things that a publisher can do for me that I want them to do on this project. So I think of it I think of it as more fluid than on a project by project basis, which is how books work anyway, that there's different goals for the book or different things the book needs to be successful. And in some cases, a publisher can help me more than others. So I don't like the reason why I got triggered was the phrasing about losing authors to self-publishing. I don't look at it that way. I think a lot of authors will probably try this, and they'll struggle with it because of all the stuff you have to do. Like there's a lot of work you have to do beyond just writing the book. And they'll probably go and say, I have another career. I'm not just a full-time writer. I'm a manager. I'm an engineer. I'm a marketer. I do something else. I like having a partnership with a publisher where they take care of some of these things I don't want to do, and I'm okay giving them some of the royalties in exchange for that. I think that the easier access to self-publishing forces publishers to do a better job at defining for themselves what value they add. And for authors like me who've done it on their own, it's harder to BS us now about it, because I can say, no, what you're telling me is hard. No, it's not that hard. I've done it. But I think that the challenge then for publishers is to, in preparation for this call, I thought there's probably a lot of editors at publishing houses that should go and self-publish a book themselves. They actually don't know as much about publishing as I do, because They know about publishing through the large publishing model. They know about what it takes for their printer to print a book, or what it takes, how the lead time it takes them to get a book into the market. But they really don't know as much about the actual experience and how much things have changed on the small scale for publishing. I think that there's maybe a wake-up call for some publishers to realize how much things have changed. And once they're aware of that, then their relationship with authors and their ability to talk to authors who are considering self-publishing, who have self-published before, they'll actually be a lot more informed about the landscape from the author's point of view.
I want to go back and underscore a couple of things you said there, because I think they're really, really important for people to hear. Now, as you were talking, I wasn't going as far as you were, only because I'm concerned about editors taking the time to actually go and self-publish. That's probably not going to happen with too many. But the thing I would encourage is, just like the conversation you and I are having, and you mentioned Mary Tressler earlier, I think that what happens in a lot of publishing houses is if you're an editor and one of your authors decides to self-publish, you blacklist them almost. You throw them out. You don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. And like you said, I mean, the banter you and I have on here is not, for stage or anything. I mean, we talk from time to time, and there's no hard feelings. In fact, I've spoken with you about what we can do from O'Reilly's point of view to help you get visibility and distribute your book, right? So I think that's an important lesson for editors. Maybe isn't necessarily if they want to go self-publish, great, but what they really ought to do is be sure to engage with their authors who are self-publishing so they can hear right from the source what the pros and cons are in it, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that that's what great editors do. I mean, I mentioned Mary. She's great. Like, when I think about working with a publisher again or working with an editor again, like Mary Tressler, and people ask me, like, who should I work with at O'Reilly? Mary Tressler. I've had a great relationship working with her and working with O'Reilly, and the fact that I self-publish is nothing. And what you're describing, though, I think makes total sense. They should be engaged because there's things right now that editors can learn from authors who have stepped outside of traditional publishing. There's feedback there about how to make O'Reilly a better publisher. That's available to them. You have a relationship with all these authors. That's knowledge that should be coming back into the company.
Yeah, that's true. And we don't talk just because I like you, even though I do. But there's selfish motivation here, right? I feel like there's things I can learn from you and your experience, and in turn, I feel like the TOC audience can learn as well. So that's why we're having this chat. But let me shift gears again here now. So in the future, since you've been in both camps, what would be the attributes for a project that would cause you to pick self-publishing over traditional publishing, or vice versa?
I don't know. I mean, so Mindfire just came out, and all of my focus now is on promoting the book and getting reviews for it and helping develop sales for it. And so I'm focused still on and it's a lot of work. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how much work is involved. So that's what I do. That's what I'm doing with all my spare time. It's just promotion. I don't know what the next book project is yet. I can think of what I would probably do, which is what most authors probably do anyway. When I have an idea and it's concrete enough in my mind that I can put it into a proposal, I'd start talking to people about it. Who can I find that's interested in it? Maybe I can't find a publisher at all that's interested in it, and I know it's my next book. Okay, decision made then. I can't find a publisher, I'll do it myself. If I find a publisher who's interested in it and I can see how they add value, they change the profile of the book or the way I can market the book, which some publishers can help me do, okay, then I'll go that way. Like you're saying about conversations, every book is an invitation to find partners or to make connections, and I imagine for every book there'll always be that process. That once it's concrete enough in my head for what it is, I can now start talking to people, and they'll tell me, we can't help you with this book. Your platform's going to be the way this book is going to be sold, or maybe they'll tell me, we think we can make the book better. That our editors have done books like yours before, and we can help guide you in a way that working on your own, your book won't be as good, and they might be right. So I think I'll always be open to those kinds of conversations.
Well, that's great advice. So Scott Berkun's latest book is Mindfire: Big Ideas for Curious Minds. Scott, just want to thank you. There's the cover for anybody who hasn't seen it. Scott, thanks for sharing your insights with us on this TOC podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Joe.